about the indirect policy and the direct policy of market equilibrium, like the price ceiling, price floor, and tax, etc. Okay. Then we talk about elasticity. Okay. And after that, I introduced you the concept of consumer theory. Okay. So this chapter here, starting this chapter, we're going to talk about producer theory. So basically, we're going to talk about how producers, the firms, make decision on what to produce, how much to produce, and how to produce them. Okay, those kind of decisions. What are the main decisions in any kind of business has to make? The main decisions before they even started. So what are the main decisions any kind of business have to make?
What are we gonna make?
What product they're gonna make, right? Okay, what else?
How much it costs to
How much it cost? Good. What else?
resource availability.
Resource availability. Okay, what else?
Demand for that product.
Demand for that product. Very good. Okay, all those things are very, very important. Okay, but in this 3 chapters, we're going to focus on 3 kinds of decisions that firms have to make. And the first one is probably the very first one and very first among a few of the important decisions they have to decide is a scale. Okay, once they decide what they want to do, they want to know how big they want. For example, you use restaurant business as an example. Okay, do I want it to be a diner or a real restaurant? Okay, how big is it going to be? Okay, and also where I want it to locate this restaurant. Okay, the location of it. 7, 8, 9. So I'm talking about the producer theory in general. Okay. Okay, so the very first decision the firm has to make is, okay, the scale of the business. Okay, after they determine, okay, the size of the business, the scale and location of the business, then the second thing they want to determine is, okay, within a day, how much sale I want to have. Okay, within the day. So the second main decisions, okay, is output. What is the optimal output level to maximize my profit? Okay, so that's the second important decision. The third one, so once the output decision is made, okay, the next question is how to produce this much. Okay, how many laborers I should hire, how many capital goods I should employ in order to produce that amount of input, output. So the third decision is input. Okay, so that's what this 3 chapter talks about. Basically, this 3 chapter talks about these 3 important decision makings. Decision on scale, decision on output, and decision on input. Okay? So this is the sequence. There's a sequence here. Okay, the sequence here is this has to be determined first, right? Then this determined afterwards, and the end the firm determines the input. So there's a sequence of this decision making. Okay? But if we want to solve a problem for a firm, let's say the firm has determined what kind of product, what kind of business they want to get into, and they need to determine what is the optimal scale, and what is the optimal output, and what is the optimal input. The firm need to determine all these 3 variables. Okay, how should they tackle this problem? Which decision they should tackle first in a mathematical environment? Which decision?
Scale.
The scale is the very first decision they have to take. But if we want to solve it mathematically,
Input. The startup cost? The startup cost?
startup cost. Okay, so let me introduce this concept because this is very abstract. So I'm going to talk about this methodology is called the backward induction. What is backward induction? Backward induction says this: if there is a sequence of decision an individual or party has to make, okay, and all those decisions are decision variables, that this business or this party has to solve. Okay? So you have three different variables, okay, and in very complicated mathematical equations. So how do we solve this? Okay, backward induction says this. It's easiest if you solve the variable at the end first. Why? Since there is a sequence, if you're trying to solve this variable in the first round, these two are unknowns. Okay? And if you're trying to solve this variable here, when you reach this stage, this is known, but this still unknown. But when you reach the last stage, if they say, the firm has reached the last stage, the firm has already determined the scale, has already determined the output, then the last stage, the only unknown variable is this input. Okay? So backward induction methodology is a methodology used in mathematics. They say, okay, when you have a sequence of the decisions, where each decision involves variable, you always target the last stage variable first. Because the reason you target last stage variable is because when you reach this stage, these two are known already, the known information. So you have the least amount of unknown information when you solve a problem. Okay, so that's what we call backward induction. Think about this environment of playing chess. Have you guys played chess with you? Okay, let's say you only have 5 moves to make. Okay, each party has 5 moves to make, and you're trying to figure out what's the first move, what's the second one, what's the third one. Okay, how are you going to determine that? What's the best move at the first time? I'm going to leave this question for you to think about. Okay, you will say something, Jay?
If you work backwards, then it would make more sense because you know where you're going to end up.
That's right. So I want to use playing chess as an example. If you only have 5 moves to make, you always think about, okay, where do you want to end up at the last move, right? And then you're going backward, you unravels. So this is the price, similarly. Okay, so mathematically, that's how we solve. We always solve the last stage variable first. So that's why the chapter is arranged this way. This is in chapter 7. This is in chapter 8, roughly. And this is in chapter 9. Okay? So basically, I'm telling you why those chapters arranged in that order. Okay? Okay? All right, so that's what we're going to do in this week and next week, in these 2 weeks. But at first, before I introduce you any theory or rationale to solve those decisions, and we need some background knowledge. Okay? First, we still have to assume we're in a perfect competitive market. Anybody remember there's characteristic of perfect competitive market?
Perfect knowledge.
Perfect information, yeah. What else?
Perfect competition.
Perfect competition, what else?
That's like maximum efficiency to reach maximum for each one.
That's true. That is true. But that is not one of the characters, but that is true in that market.
The sellers aren't the cost setters.
They are price
Right.
price what? Takers. They're price takers. They're not price setters. So each supplier, each firm, take the price determined by market and has to sell the product at that price. They have no control over what price to sell. Okay? And how about market power? Do firms have market power in that market? No, no market power. Okay? Market power is the power of charging a higher price without losing all the customers. And in a perfect competitive market, you don't have that power. If you charge a higher price, you're going to lose everyone. Okay? So this is a perfect competitive market. So we're still assuming we're in that kind of market, right? Okay, so first, background knowledge I want to introduce you is called economic profit. Economic profit. So how do we define economic profit? Well, economic profit mathematically is equal to the total revenue minus total economic cost. Total revenue minus total economic cost. Do we know how to compute the total revenue? Total revenue, what's total revenue equal to?
Expenses.
Huh?
Income minus expenses.
Total revenue. Do we include expenses in revenue?
Oh, no.
We don't, right? That is in the cost, right? So what is total revenue equal to? We'll learn
Price
that
of A
from-
times the demand for X.
Price multiply
Quantity.
quantity. Price multiply quantity. P multiply Q. Okay? And then we're going to talk about total economic cost. Okay? Total economic cost includes two parts.
That's usually like opportunity costs and like startup costs. So we can.
It's one of them is opportunity cost. So total opportunity cost include the two parts. Okay? What is two parts? The one part is called out-of-pocket cost. Out-of-pocket cost like overhead cost. Okay, that cost that you have to incur in order to run the business. Okay, so that's part of the total economic cost. And then there's another cost that has to be included in the economic cost. That's called opportunity cost. So that's what's difference. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. Now we use this example to understand why do we want to know about economic profit. Once we know the number, the value of economic profit, what we can conclude about this business. Okay, so suppose we have two people, Sue and Ann, decides to start a business selling turquoise belts in the Denver airport. Okay, they decide to sell belts in the airport. To get into this business, they have to invest in a fancy push cart, and the price of push cart is $20,000. And we assume that if someday they decide to get out of this business, they can easily sell this push cart, get this $20,000 back. Okay, this is a very important assumption. Okay. Okay. And this push cart comes with all the displays and attachment. Assume that this Sue and Ann estimate that they will sell. They will sell 3,000 per year. At $10 each. Okay. And each belt costs them $5 to buy. So, and additionally, they have to stuff this push cart has to be stuffed by a clerk who works for annual salary, annual wage rate of $14,000 per year.
So the two of them together purchased all of this, the $20,000 push cart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the setup. Okay. And okay. Also, we assume that interest rate is current interest rate is 10% annually. Okay. So two people are selling belts in the airport. Okay. They have to buy a $20,000 push cart. They have to hire a clerk, and which costs them $14,000 per year. They estimate they're going to sell 3,000 belts. Each one they're going to sell at $10. And when they buy the belts, it costs them $5 each. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so I want you to use the concept we learned there to answer this question. Is this business making positive economic profit? Is this business making positive economic profit? Or not?
No.
Okay, tell me why and give me some calculation here.
Well, the belts only come up to 30,000 in total revenue, and this cart and cloak, I mean not cloak,
Okay,
cart
first,
alone are 34,000.
What is total revenue?
$6,000.
30,000.
Interest rate.
Everybody agrees? $37? Okay, good. Okay, then total economic cost? What's total economic cost?
$20,000 for the push cart.
$20,000 for the push cart.
14,000 for the clerk.
Plus the cost of making the belt, which equals 50 grand.
Yeah, plus the cost.
What else?
Plus the cost of making the belt, which is 15 grand, 15,000.
5 multiplied. What else?
The interest
The
rate.
interest rate is 3,000.
No.
Yeah, 10% of 30,000. No, that's okay.
3,000. $3,000.
3,000.
Okay. 3,000. I'm going to put question mark here. Okay, so that's why we want to do example to analyze what are the costs we need to include here and what are not. Okay. First, what is the out-of-pocket cost?
The push cart.
20 grand.
Did I mention its assumption?
Yeah.
What assumption is?
You can get that money back if you sell it.
So is that an expense for you?
No.
No. You have that push cart, that is your asset. You can liquidify that anytime. That is not expense because of the assumption. So that's why $20,000 should not be included in the total economic cost. Okay. How about $14,000 clerk fee? Rich. Can we get that money back after pay somebody? So that is out-of-pocket cost. How about that $15,000 that you buy belts? Can you get it back? No.
No.
When you buy it from wholesaler, you cannot sell those belts back to them, right? Okay. So those are out-of-pocket costs. Okay. And the last is, it's very good that you're thinking about adding the opportunity cost, right? Okay. So now let's go back to the concept of opportunity cost. So what is opportunity cost?
The cost of the next best alternative.
The cost that you
Give
forego by not making the best alternative choice, right? Okay. So you have $20,000 soon and have this $20,000 to invest. Now they decide to do this business with that money. But if they don't do this business with that money, what can they do with this money?
It could be invested in a different business.
They can put it invest in a different business or put in the bank, earning an interest, which is how much?
10%.
10% of $20,000. That is $1,000. So if they do not do this business with this $20,000 and just simply put this money in the bank, they can make $2,000 interest every year, and that's their so far best alternative choice, because we do not know other business opportunity or the profit they're going to make, right? We're assuming there is another option, very easy to see option, that is put money in the bank, earn interest, and that will give them $2,000. So they give up that $2,000 interest in order to do this business. So what is the opportunity cost of here of doing this business? $2,000. It's $2,000.
So if we see a question like this, a test or a quiz, then we should assume that, unless otherwise told, putting money into the bank is the opportunity.
Yeah, if I gave you the interest rate, that's what's the indication.
Okay.
Yeah. So now you know what should be included in the total economic cost. Can you calculate what is total economic cost is right now?
$31,000.
$31,000. Now can you tell me what is the total economic cost? Oh, no, total economic profit.
They only make $50,000 self-expense.
So following the formula here, what is total economic profits?
Negative $16,000.
Negative? How much?
16,000. You. Total.
This minus this is equal to what?
Oh, sorry. I
That
was
is 1,000.
using the other number.
What? 1,000. Negative 1,000.
So,
This business making negative economic profit. What does this tell you?
Should.
They should invest in something else.
Very good. So all this tells you is they should not invest in this turquoise bell business. But does it tell you whether this business is making money or not? No. This business actually is making some money. How much money they make annually?
Oh, $30,000.
How much profit they make
Nothing.
each year? Look at the number there. Number tells you that.
30.
No. Negative 30.
The total revenue is $30,000. This is the money. If we don't include this opportunity cost, this is really what you have to pay, right? Out of pocket, right? That's $29,000, right? So every year, how much money you take home?
1,000.
$1,000 for those two people. So they're making money. They're not losing money. So this total economic profit does not tell you whether this business is making money or not. But it tells you that compared to the best alternative choice, whether it's worthwhile.
They're losing $1,000.
That's right. Yeah, if they're making the best alternative choice, they can make $2,000 instead of $1,000. So that's why it is come out, it's negative. Okay, so that's what total economic profit tells you. It tells you whether it's worthwhile doing this business. It does not tell you whether you're making profit or not. All right? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to ask a question here. What would be the interest rate that will make the economic profit equal to 0. And when economic profit equal to 0, what does it mean?
It's in
Hmm?
it's in the good, like
It's good.
Yeah.
And actually you're indifferent, right? You're indifferent between doing this business and putting the money into the bank, right? That's when the economic profit equals 0. So what is the interest rate has to be in order for the economic profit to be 0? The interest has to be $1,000, right? If the interest has to be $1,000 per year, what will be the interest rate? 5%, right? If the interest rate is 5%, then the economic profit in this situation would be equal to 0. Okay? So, when the interest rate equal to 5%, and what you have is this. Then we give a name to this 5%. We call this normal rate of return. Okay. What is normal rate of return? Normal rate of return is make you just satisfied with what you're doing. Normal rate of return is a rate of return that makes you just satisfied with what you're doing. So basically, normal rate of return will give you 0 economic profit. So now I'm going to ask you a question in another way. So if a business is making a normal rate of return, is this business making money?
Yes,
Yes, that's right.
but they're not making any economic profit.
That's right, but they're making money. So that's first background knowledge I want to introduce to you is economic profit and normal rate of return. And we're going to come back to this concept later. Okay, so let's move on and to the next concept. There are some practice questions in my econ lab, for this normal rate of return and economic profit.
when are you gonna open up that homework? Or is it already open? Today? Okay.
Yeah. If I don't do it, then remind me. Okay, so the next concept I want to introduce is about the different time period that we use in order to analyze firm's decision. Okay? Short run and the long run. Okay. We analyze firm's decision in these two different kind of time period. One is short run and the long run. Okay? Why do we want to do that? Okay? Think about it. If you start a business, let's say, let's continue using the restaurant business as example. And you put a lot of money into this restaurant business by, buying all the equipment, tables, utensil, and install everything, right? There's a big capital investment at the beginning. Do you expect to get all that money back in the first couple of years?
No.
No. So the first couple of years, which we call it in the short run, those costs, which actually we call the fixed costs, are not your primary concern. What's your primary concern in the short run at the beginning?
Staying afloat.
As long as your revenue, your daily revenue or monthly revenue cover your monthly expense, overhead, let's say utility bill, and the wage, for the staff, and the cost of raw material, as long as your revenue covers those kind of costs, then you're happy, right? That means, and you can continue to run this business. So in the short run, your primary concern is different from long run. But if they say you are 5 years into your business, of course you start thinking about, have I get all my initial investment back, right? So within the long run, long period of time, your concern has changed, has switched from those daily expenses, covering daily expenses, to covering both daily expenses and the fixed cost. So that's why we want to analyze from decision in both these two different time periods, because their primary concern are different. So that's the reason, okay? But then you may ask me, how do we differentiate the short run and the long run? I mean, is 2 years, 3 years short run or 4 years long run? How do we determine that? Again, this is really this is a subjective question, actually. It is subjective. There is no absolute answer for any kind of business, okay? But the concept here is, and as a business owner, and you will know at a certain time, and you're going to start thinking about the covering fixed cost, okay? And then your concern will start switching, and your decision will change following that, okay? So that's why we differentiate short run, long run, okay? So in order to talk about firm's decision in the short run, long run, and we're going to, let's say, assume a couple of things, okay? In the long run, okay, you're trying to cover all the costs, you can do a lot of things in the long run, and you can even get out of this business. Like after 5 years or 6 years, if you're still not covering any, bit of your fixed cost, you're not having the growth rate that you expected, you're probably thinking, maybe I should get out of this business. So in the long run, you can exit the business, exit market. So exit is a decision you can make in the long run. However, in the short run, nobody wants to shut down their business within the first couple of years. They want to give it time for the business to grow. They want to give it time for the customer to get to know this business. So usually, exit decision is not a decision, and it's not even a choice variable for the firm in the short run. Okay, so no exit. Okay, so that's one difference. And another difference is this, and after you install everything, build your business, and you're going to keep that kind of business in the first couple of years. Nobody's want to, let's say, they open a Shogun in Lumberton, then within 1 year they say, I'm going to change the location, they change it to Pinehurst. No one is want to do that, right? Okay. Or within a year say, I'm going to expand it, even bigger. Okay. Unless this business is going really crazy, nobody want to do that, right? So in the short run, you're not really changing your, the scale or location of the business. You're not changing those kind of fixed input factors, okay? But in the long run, anything can happen. You may change the location, you may shrink the business, you may expand the business, and you can change all this kind of thing. So in the short run, we assume no exit, and also in short run, we assume the capital goods, capital input are fixed. So basically, this indicates that, we're not changing the scale of the business. Okay. So that's how do we differentiate, short run, long run. Okay. So in the short run, really, you're just going to concern about, okay, how much sale and will take place each month, and will that sale cover my overhead cost? Okay, so. All right, so now we're going to start with the short run decision. Okay, so we're going to start with short run. Short run analysis. And I'm going to introduce you a few more concepts here. And one is called the total product. And then I'm going to talk about average product And then we'll talk about marginal product. Total product are just total output. Okay, total product is just the total output. Okay, and here we assume that there are two kinds of inputs. Okay, that will be employed or used in order to make this production. Two kinds of input. One is what we call the capital input. And the other one is called labor inputs. So basically we simplify the inputs, all the input into these two categories. The first one is capital input, the second one is labor input. But labor input basically is how many workers you hire. Okay, so there's two kind of inputs. Okay, since we are in the short-run analysis, capital inputs are fixed, and only changing variable, input variable, is the labor input is changing. Okay, guys with me? All right. So total product, we just say this is the total output. You can use Q to represent it, or you can use the TP to represent it. Okay, represent, they are the same thing. The average product. Well, average product has to be in a relationship with one of the input. So since we're in the short-term analysis, capital input is fixed, and the average product here, we can just say average product of labor. Okay. The average product of labor is computed this way. It's equal to total product divided by the labor units. Labor input, we use L to represent it. Capital inputs, we use K to represent it. So this is the formula here. Last one, marginal product. Again, it has to be in relationship with one of the input, we use labor. Marginal product labor is equal to this. Change of total product divided by the change of labor. So what this means here is, when you change your labor by 1 more unit, what is the change of your total product? So if I employ 1 more waiter or waitress, how many more sales that will happen? That's what the meaning of marginal product labor. And the average product labor means what is total product each worker will bring to the business on average. So this is average, marginal, and total. Okay. Next, I'm going to show you the graph, show you the relationship among those with respect to L. Okay. Next is graphing. But why do we want to do that? Okay. Think about those. Total product, average product of labor, marginal product labor. They all are measurements of productivity. They all are measurements of productivity. We use those things to tell us how productive your business is right now. Okay? So each one tells you something about productivity. That's why we're interested in all of them. I'm gonna show you the picture, the first one. Then I want you to think about what is the relationship between the second one and L. So the first one, total product with labor. Look at that graph there, and I want you to tell me why you think this total product increases with labor has that kind of pattern, has that kind of shape. At the beginning, we call it a convex shape. This is called concave shape. Why it has these two different shapes at the beginning and after? Then after we talk about data, we'll stop here. Why? This part here at the beginning is increasing with increasing rate, or is increasing with decreasing rate?
Increasing rate.
Increasing rate. So this part here is increasing with increasing rate, and this part here is increasing with a decreasing rate. So, I mean, if we just look at the shape, it tells us the output increase very fast at the beginning when you hire more and more workers. But after a certain point, it still increase, but the speed of increase slows down every time you increase another worker. Why is that?
As you start, for lack of a better word, you start saturating the workforce. Like you have too many people to cover too few jobs.
That's right. So the idea here is within the short run. If in the short run, we have fixed capital input, which means the scale of the business is fixed, right? The size of scale of the business is fixed. When those things are fixed, you have fixed capacity of production. You have the fixed capacity to accommodate certain number of workers. For diner, it can only accommodate at most 3 workers. That's most they can accommodate. At the beginning, when you do not have enough workers, every time you hire additional one, and you're really gonna see the dramatic increase of your revenue or your production. But after you reach that limit, after you exhausted all your production potential within that scale, then if you want to keep increasing, then the increase of your production is going to decrease. And at a certain point, it may go down. Okay, so the reason of this shape here is due to this assumption. Because we have fixed capital inputs, because the scale, the size of business is fixed, because production capacity is fixed. If that can be relaxed, if the business can expand, if the scale can increase, of course you can increase. You can have more and more workers work for you and still enjoy the benefit of the increasing rate. But since within the short run, we're not changing the scale, and for each scale, it can only accommodate a certain level of input comfortably. Okay, so that's why it has this increasing shape and decreasing comfort. Okay, and in fact, average product labor and marginal product labor, these two other productivity measurement also based on the same idea, okay? Based on the same idea here. And I'm going to tell you the shape, then we'll talk more next time. So for these two, is that. So at the beginning, average product labor increases, marginal product labor increases. So that tells you, okay, productivity increases, okay? But after a certain point, those productivity goes down, again, for the same reason, okay? It's due to the same reason. You have fixed scale, you have fixed production potential. You can only accommodate a certain level of input comfortably. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to put APL, and so this is abbreviation of this is APL. Abbreviation of this is MPL. Okay. So if we put them together here, APL is this, and MPL is right here. Okay. So that's the relationship between the APL and MPL. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to look at this graph and answer the following questions for me. If APL is greater than MPL, is MPL increasing or decreasing? If the business is employing a level of input at a level that satisfies that, MPL is increasing or decreasing?
Increasing.
Increasing, decreasing.
Increasing.
Somebody say decreasing, somebody say increasing. How do you see that? When is the stage or period that APL is greater? I'm going to divide this into two parts, okay? Let's say this is L0. Before L0, APL graph is above MPL, right?
Mhm.
What happened to MPL? Increasing, goes up. And after this level, MPL is APL. And MPL is decreasing. So this is a relationship between the two productivity measurements. I think I can finish this part here. All right. Very last thing, just very small thing here. So we're just going to draw here. Okay. And we use MPL's value to divide the whole production into 3 stages here. Okay. Stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Most of the business will follow this stage, but with the internet booming, or internet and social media, new technology coming into the marketplace, this may not follow anymore. Okay, traditional business follow this change here. What is stage 1? At stage 1, when you increase your labor employment, your marginal product of labor increasing. Okay? So as you hire more and more workers, your marginal productivity increases. At stage 2, okay, after you hire a certain number of workers, okay, you reach stage 2. At stage 2, MPL, marginal product of labor, is decreasing, but it's still positive. So which means every time you hire additional worker, your total product, your total output still increases. But is the increasing speed that becomes smaller and smaller. So you're still enjoying the more product due to the additional hire. But that marginal, increase, it gets smaller and smaller. So that's the second stage. The stage 3, if you keep employing more workers, you reach stage 3. At stage 3, your MPL, marginal product labor, is decreasing. Not only that, actually it becomes negative. So what this tells you that now you hire another worker, there's too many people working in a small place, they get into conflict, your output goes down, your sale goes down, and your cost goes up. Your management cost, your conflict resolving cost goes up, and then that causes you sale go down, your revenue go down. So you, as a business, you really should not get into stage 3. But no business know exactly where it stops. So sometimes what we see is back to stage. But eventually they will figure out where to stop. Okay, so this is a general trend for any kind of traditional business. Okay. Any question here? Okay, so that's what I want to cover in Majority School, Chapter 7. Okay. Please sign